not ready? We're shooting the photographs right now. Sheriff, whenever you're ready.
Yes, go ahead, Sheriff.
Test, test, test. All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out this afternoon, and thank you for your patience and cooperation today. It's been a long day, but again, I want to thank you guys for working with us all day long. Today obviously highlights the dangerous and challenging profession that law enforcement can be. I'll give you a quick update on the officer. He is still in critical but stable condition. However, I want to note that he has a long road to complete recovery. So he still has a lot of recovering to do, obviously. So we would ask that you keep the officer and his family in your prayers. We will not be releasing or confirming his name today. He works in an undercover capacity, and based on some conversations, we feel like that releasing his name today could jeopardize his safety. We may release that in the next few weeks, but as of today, we are not going to be releasing his name or confirming his name. I do want to take a minute before I ask Chief Hackney to come up and talk about some details of the case, and thank the community. The outpouring of support from this community today has been unbelievable, as it has been in many events in the last 7 or 8 months. But really a special thank you to the community today for all of the text messages and phone calls and really officers all over the city being approached by officers and thanked for their service. So I want to thank the community for that. I had talked to the mayor several times today. We began conversations probably about 7:45 this morning. I know he has made a couple of statements. He's currently out of town, but he's been engaged in the process the entire time, and we have obviously been communicating, and he's been very supportive. The council, lots of information again, sharing with the council, keeping them up to date on what's going on. They also were very concerned. The governor and I have talked today as well. He sent his thoughts and prayers out to the family, and we shared that with the family today as well. The Attorney General, sheriffs statewide, our regional sheriffs really reaching out and providing support, especially Rick Beasler in Clay County. Talked to Rick earlier today. Clay County helped us tremendously this morning with the traffic issue. I'm sure they'll be there this afternoon to help us again as well. So I want to thank them for their work today. The Florida Highway Patrol, again, did a fantastic job for us this morning. We had a mess on our hands in terms of traffic this morning, and would have had a challenge getting through that had it not been for the help of, again, Clay County and Florida Highway Patrol. CSX Police, again, a big help for us at the scene today. They help coordinate some train traffic and those type of things for us, and again, things that we can't do on our own. So we want to thank them for that cooperation. And we are fortunate here in Jacksonville to have one of the best fire departments in the country. And I want to thank JFRD for their work at the scene today. They obviously did a lot to help save the officer's life, and we appreciate that immensely. I want to share that with everyone. And obviously the staff at UF Health. Again, great cooperation today, great collaboration. It's always a challenging time when we have an officer at the hospital for any reason, and they were fantastic to work with today. So I want to thank the staff at UF Health for that. We also had a command post location today at the U.S. Fleet Reserve Center, which had a big impact on their business all day today. So we want to thank them for their cooperation, for allowing us to set up shop there for the day and get this very important work done. And we also had some outreach from a couple of restaurants in town. Chick-fil-A on Roosevelt and Tremendous Barbecue on Hurlong reached out to provide some support in the form of lunch for the officers who were working at the scene and manning perimeter positions and all of that. So again, just a tremendous outpouring of support from the community as well as our local law enforcement community and statewide law enforcement community. So I can't thank everyone enough for that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Hackney. He's going to work through some of the details, and then he and I will both be able to answer a couple of questions when we're done. Tom?
Thanks, sir. Go over the details that I covered this morning, some of which I'll clarify, a couple of points that I made this morning, and go back through it. So around 7:20 this morning, we had the off-duty undercover detective who was actually on his way to work, and during the trip to work, he would take his son to school and had his son in the vehicle with him. Sees a vehicle pass him by, go around him on the left side, and begin to drive erratically. He makes the decision at that point in time to go ahead and initiate a traffic stop with that car, and does so. When he tries to initiate the traffic stop, the suspect driving the car, it's a white Cadillac, doesn't immediately stop. So I hate to call it a pursuit, but it's a short period along Collins Road there where the suspect chooses not to immediately stop. But he does stop and pulls over right on the other side of the railroad tracks. And those railroad tracks are on Collins, closer to Roosevelt side than the Blanding side. And the off-duty detective pulls in behind him, rear end of the vehicle, partially on the railroad tracks. At some point during the time that the car passed him and he stopped the car, he put his ballistic body armor on. These undercover detectives, especially in our narcotics unit, they jump and go pretty fast. Part of what their course of their duties is to be reactive when things happen. They are, as such, ready to go at a moment's notice. Took that from inside his passenger compartment of the vehicle, threw it on, and was ready. Thank God that he did, because as the suspect got out of his car, he immediately began firing at the undercover detective. If you look over here to my right, you see the windshield of the undercover detective's car. Those are 4 bullet holes that are very scarily placed in that windshield, right into the passenger compartment, right on the driver's side, coming from an angle of the left of the car towards the right of the car. Knowing that his son was in the car, concerned for his safety, he exits the car and begins to return fire at this suspect. No conversation that we know of between the undercover detective and the suspect. The only conversation they had was gunfire. He returned fire at him. Suspect fired 4 times with a 9mm handgun. The undercover detective fired 9 times with his issued Glock pistol. Our evidence at the scene really dictates the fact that he was not hit by the undercover detective's fire, and he fled on foot westbound on Collins Road. The suspect was able to get his police radio, get on the radio and put out the information that he'd been shot, and that is a very chilling little moment of time that you listen to, that it's every cop's worst nightmare to hear your guy who rides near you or another policeman get on the radio and talk about how he got fired on or got hit. The suspect runs on foot to a nearby business and steals a running truck. The business had gone out and began to warm up their trucks for the day. He finds an opportunity, takes one of those trucks, and begins to flee. I mentioned this morning 2 of the nearby business owners and workers see what had happened, heard the commotion, heard the shots being fired, went out and put themselves in harm's way and pulled the undercover detective off of the railroad track. After the shooting, he had moved himself behind the vehicle and was precariously placed in the path of a train. There's nothing worse than getting shot, to find yourself in the path of an oncoming train when you may not realize that, and those heads up on those guys' part could have even more saved his life. So they moved his car off the railroad tracks and pulled him off the railroad tracks. The train coming blocked Collins Road. So as the undercover detective put the description out on the radio, did a great job of being coherent, being heads up despite being hit numerous times, puts that information out on the suspect description. The 2 responding officers, or 2 other responding officers, come. Because Collins Road is blocked by the train tracks, they have to turn around. As they're turning around, the owner of the business who had their truck stolen flags those 2 officers down and says, "Hey, we think the guy that did this stole our truck." So they're able to get a description of the truck, and sure enough, being coincidence like they happen, right place at the right time, they see that truck on Collins Road heading westbound. They get in behind it and begin to try to stop that. Vehicle doesn't stop. The guy's just shot a police officer, and he's not really wanting to pull over. Begins to flee and turns into a neighborhood off of Collins Road, goes down towards the end of the street, makes a turn, and runs that Ford F-350 truck into a house. Gets out of the truck and runs into the house, kicks the front door of that house in, runs into that house. The 2 officers who are responding obviously see all this. They make their way to attempt to surround the house, thinking he might go through it. As they go between 2 neighbors' house, they come to the back of the house which he ran into, can see him inside. He's armed with the gun. They're yelling at him to drop the gun. He takes the gun from the position that he had it and aims it at them through the sliding glass door of the house. They obviously fear for themselves being shot based on the suspect's actions. Both of them fired a combination of 8 times between the two of them. Hard to determine which one fired how many times at this point in time. It's part of what we do is we'll go through and make that determination. But 8 shots between the two of them. Suspect was hit at least 3 times in the leg, the torso, and the hand. Possibly a suicide by cop. I mentioned this morning that he was going to be treated and released. That was some erroneous information that got passed on to us, just a miscommunication. He was released from the trauma center, but not released from Shands UF Health in general. So he is still there in stable condition, but still in UF Health being treated. He's not being released at this point in time. I mentioned this morning that what we believe to be immediately before our undercover detective came in contact with them, he and his live-in girlfriend at this house became involved in a bit of a domestic disturbance. He armed himself with a gun that was inside the house that was owned by one of the other residents of the house and threatened himself, told his live-in girlfriend that today was going to be his last day on earth, pointed the gun at himself, fired 2 shots inside the house, then either at himself or into the ceiling, threatened her, and abruptly left this morning armed with that gun, what she believed to be on his way to work. He was employed, left the house, and we feel like as he was leaving the house, fleeing from whatever he was going through at that period of time, is when our undercover detective encountered him, passing him, and in the sequence of events that I just outlaid is what occurred. He is been positively identified now as 19-year-old Kevin Ryan Rojas, R-O-J-A-S. He has a very minor arrest record with us as an adult. The 2 officers that were involved in the shooting, the second shooting, where the suspect ran into the house, one of them is 6-year veteran Sam Pagan, P-A-G-A-N, and the other one is 7-year veteran Clyde Jacobs. Both of those, this is their first involved shooting, and both, per our policy, have been placed on administrative leave. As the sheriff mentioned, I had an opportunity to talk with our recovering undercover detective this afternoon and talk to his wife. Prayers are answered, I can tell you that, because of the fact that he is there, alive, and able to talk. The sheriff mentioned about law enforcement, family in general. I can tell you that we come together when one of us gets hurt, and JSO family with the detectives and those who are involved in this job. Again, we all sign up for it with a certain understanding of what you may encounter, and when it occurs and when you encounter it, you deploy the skills and the training. I feel like the training that we receive is some of the best in the country, and the fact that he is currently alive, was able to defend himself, turned out defending his son, and return fire to someone who set out to do him harm, set out to do other officers harm as well, is a credit to our training, but also a stark reality of just how dangerous the job that the thousands of men and women in this country and thousands in this city do every day to protect the taxpayers and the good people of Jacksonville. I can, as the sheriff mentioned, either here or I can answer questions that may come up.
Yeah, questions?
Should this officer have made this stop or this time in the car in the first place?
Your Honor. So that's something that we will look at as we look at all incidents. We'll review top to bottom. Nothing that we've looked at today. I mean, obviously we're going to dig into that after the fact, but today is about obviously working this case the way we should, and the officer and his family. So we will address that at a later time.
What's the policy for take-home cars? Are they allowed to
They are.
provide family members?
You can, absolutely, yes.
We're hearing reports from law enforcement sources. Can you tell us if they're valid or not? That this officer was under some sort of investigation and officers were following him, and perhaps this investigation had something to do with the shooting. We don't know if that's valid or not.
No, I haven't. No. That's not going to be valid.
Sheriff, was there a 911 call from this domestic dispute this morning?
I don't know the answer to that, Tom. Do you know?
No, there was none.
No.
What did the officer initially call in when he made the traffic stop? Were there any, initial call-ins from him at that time, which is, I believe, a protocol? Or?
Yeah, the initial call from the officer was actually that a signal 34, which means officer needs help and that he had been shot. That's the initial call that came in on the radio this morning.
Should he have called in the plate or anything like that when he made the stop? Is that part of the protocol?
That's something, again, that we will look at as we review the incident, that type of thing. But part of the protocol is that you check out on a call like that, yes.
You may release his identity in a few weeks. You say, will this prohibit his ability to be an undercover officer?
It could, and that's what we're looking at. So he's got a couple things that are working that we need to kind of vet out before we do that. And I know there's a name out there. We're not going to confirm, obviously, anything that you guys may have heard up to this point. But we need to make sure that we have covered all the bases before we release his name.
Did family of the suspect give you any indication of prior, mental health issues or concerns that would have led to him being suicidal?
I have not talked to the family of the suspect. Tom, you got anything?
The suspect's mother made some statements to us that this is not normally her son. The behavior that you saw today is not normally her son. However, I will mention that one of the roommates in the house that lived with them decided that they would arm themselves with that legally purchased handgun based on his erratic behavior within the past few weeks, and found themselves frightened enough that they should do so based on the way he was acting. So, hard, honestly, to say. Documented, not necessarily, but like the story that was relayed to us, kind of makes you wonder.
Had the girlfriend called in saying, my boyfriend just fired a couple shots, would there have been enough time for that information to go out over radios where this officer might have heard or seen some kind of suspect description or a car or something, so he would have known, hey, that was just on the radio?
I would tend to think so, but without the crystal ball in front of me, it's really hard to say. When you see these cases like this and that are unreported domestic violence, you certainly want to encourage somebody who's in the midst of something like that to pick up that phone and call us. At least give us the opportunity to intercede. Domestic murders happen because of things like this and folks armed with guns when they're heated, and domestic murders occur like that. So involving of law enforcement in those incidents can be the one thing that could save one of those victims' lives.
Does Mr. Rojas have a license to carry a gun?
Not that I've seen.
Is he required to put on the bulletproof vest making a stop, or is that a choice he made with seeing what he saw?
That would be a choice that he made.
So he suspected there was a possibility of a problem from what he witnessed, based on what you heard from him?
Really, you're asking me to kind of suppose. If I supposed, I would have to suppose yes, because he did put that body armor on.
If that's the case, are officers encouraged or discouraged then to pull someone over if he felt the need to put on a bulletproof vest, especially with a civilian in the car?
Let me answer that, Tom.
Yeah.
So and Tom has mentioned this before about the unknown nature of traffic stops, and there is no such thing as a routine traffic stop. So anytime there's a traffic stop, we obviously, you want to be wearing that vest. So I think, to your point, I don't think that there was anything ominous about this stop that made him want to wear a vest, other than he's doing what his training has dictated that he would do.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
that made him pull this guy over in the first place?
And we're still working through that. Obviously, he's going to have to give us that detail and fill in the
I don't know if you said, was he the owner of the gun, or do we know who the owner of the gun was?
the suspect.
Suspect was not the owner of the gun. One of the roommates of the house had legally purchased the handgun, and somehow she was not aware that he had taken her gun and used it today.
Can you give us a route? So what house did he leave this morning, or area, going to where the officers were on to where he ended? How far of a distance are we talking about here?
Within a couple miles. He left the house in the Whispering Pines neighborhood, turned on Collins Road, went Collins towards Roosevelt, and it was somewhere in that vicinity that the undercover detective encountered him. He passed him, and the course of events that I've outlaid began.
You said the officer should survive. Can you say anything about the nature of his injuries?
He's hit at least, 3 times, maybe 4 times. He's hit in the hand, he's hit in the head, he's hit in the torso, so there's at least 3 times.
Is it critical?
Critical but stable.
They're calling it critical but stable. I mean, he was aware, awake, and alert this afternoon when I had a chance to talk to him. He's just lucky.
How do you describe the mindset of his son right now?
Freaked out. I mean, he saw his dad get shot. I don't, you have to feel for a little guy that does this. I've got 2 kids that know what I do and know the potential because I've raised them to know that. We all, in some respects, do that. For them to be the front seat witness of that happening, say a little prayer for him too. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot for a little guy.
Do you suspect someone could have died if this officer hadn't gotten involved?
Say that
A
again.
random innocent if he kept driving.
Oh yeah, I mean, here's a guy who tells family members today could be his last day on earth. People with suicidal ideologies could be homicidal. It's just a cold hard fact.
Do we have any further clarity? You had mentioned this morning there may have actually been an exchange of gunfire. It sounds like you're fairly sure now.
Yes. Our undercover detective did fire shots this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before he even.
Yeah.
got in
Yes.
the car.
Yes. Yeah. We made entry into the house, and the suspect did fire shots, which matched the story provided this morning. We couldn't confirm that because we hadn't gotten in the house.
How fast was the chase? Any idea how fast they were driving?
Just a couple minutes. I mean, that's
No, how fast?
how fast. I don't know the speeds.
So the officer was in the car when he was shot. His son was in the front seat.
Son was in the front seat. He was in the front seat. He began to exit the car. As he exited the car, our suspect exited his car, began to move around the front of his Cadillac, and fire shots at the officer.
And did the officer put his arm up like this? Is that how his hand got shot?
I don't know. I mean, those bullets can go a lot of different ugly places. It's hard to say where his hand was.
The home that the suspect crashed into and ultimately went into and through to the back, was that his home?
The house that he actually crashed the truck into was the next door neighbor's house. So that was an open driveway. He crashed into that side of the garage at that house, got out, ran to the next door house, which was his.
And were there other people in the home?
Yeah, well, his living girlfriend, and I believe some other ones, as a matter of fact, because he made statements to them that he had just shot a cop. So
And you said the gun was registered to a roommate. Is that separate?
it
from
was.
the
It
girlfriend?
was no. Yes, it was. It was legally purchased by another roommate, a separate person from the girlfriend.
Did the suspect say why he did it?
No, I'm just relaying the facts that the residents of the house heard him say that he had just shot a cop.
Sheriff, I want you to clarify one thing you said. So their protocol is to call in and is it clock out, or how did you describe it when they make a traffic stop like that?
So typically you would, if you have time, you would log out, minus some extenuating circumstances. You want to do that via policy, but you also want to do that for an officer safety reason, to let everybody know where you are. So if you have time to do that, that's what that's the first option, so to speak. So
And
yes.
He didn't do that.
He did not do that today, right.
Do we know if there was time to do it?
We don't know that yet, so that's something that we'll look at. But again, you're talking about in the grand scheme of things, a pretty minor, policy violation, obviously. What we do want to stress today is the fact that we give officers a lot of discretion. Obviously, to these situations are so dynamic, and there's not a lot. You can't write every situation in policy and tell people to follow that to the letter. So, again, when we look at this and when we get information from the officer about why he chose to do what he did, he may be fine in that.
You
So
spoke
no
to the
issues.
officer. Can you say if is he coherent enough to say if he's in good spirits or how he is mentally
I
right
don't speak to
now?
him.
Yeah.
Conscious enough to-
No, he was awake, aware, alert, knew who I was. Began to kind of talk a little bit about that, which tried to discourage him from doing it. Just let him know that we're there, we care, and do what we can for he and his family. So, he was aware of what had happened, and was alert and thankful that he was there.
A quick clarification, the prior incident with the suspect, which a roommate told you about, the potential mental health incident, that was not called into police in any capacity?
No, that was not called into police, and that was this morning immediately prior to what
Okay,
occurred.
so there was not a second incident a few weeks back?
Not that we've been able to see. What I mentioned was whatever has gone on with the suspect's mental condition in the last few weeks, it's been enough to cause that other roommate concern enough that they would go legally purchase a handgun and keep it for their protection against him.
Can you describe that ballistics vest? Was it a standard issue officer vest, or was it special to an undercover officer?
It's the normal one that we would wear in a uniform is designed more to go underneath your uniform shirt. This is a tactical ballistic vest where it has attachments on the outside where you would keep potentially your pepper spray or handcuffs or other utility items that you'd have, Velcro for the badge, Velcro for the police across the front, police across the back. It's a little tougher than you would normally have, but designed to be worn on the outside of clothing versus underneath.
And clearly marked with police on.
Clearly, on the front and the back, with the badge.
Any other questions? Does this officer, the one we're not naming, have any other, like previous incidents or anything like that?
No, this is his first officer-involved incident.
Again, the charges for the suspect are?
At this point in time, we're still working through that, charging him with at least one count of attempted murder for the shooting at the law enforcement officer, and at least 2 counts of aggravated assault based on him pointing the gun at the 2 officers at the second incident where they shot him.
In terms of community support, other than prayers, is there anything, if people want to help the family financially or anything like that? Are they asking for that at this point or anything?
All the family is asking for now is prayers for that speedy recovery, and just like I said, for that little guy who had to witness what he did. The outpouring of support when these things happen, it's pretty touching, and she felt that today. I talked to his wife, and she certainly felt that, and it'll warm your heart, that's for sure, when you see this. But they haven't asked for any financial support. We try pretty hard to take care of our own.
Well, listen, thank you again for your patience and your cooperation today. Thanks.